Most people think the conflict between generations is about technology, fashion, or slang. Well, it isn't. It's about meaning, about who gets to define reality. And nothing threatens an old definition like a young person who finally sees clearly. Ask any therapist who works with families. The moment a teenager or 20-something starts therapy, the household barometer swings wildly. Elders roll their eyes. They whisper that psychologists put ideas in their heads, that healers make youngsters uncontrollable, that therapy breaks families and teaches them to be selfish. Some will even point to divorces or dramatic life pivots and say, "See, therapy ruined everything." But here's the thing the elders miss. Therapy didn't plant rebellion. It took off the pink glasses. When a young person starts naming what they feel, what they've carried, and what is theirs versus what was projected onto them, they stop cooperating with the family myth. The old story, suffer in silence, survive and respect authority because it's older, no longer hypnotizes them. And of course that looks like defiance from the outside. Of course it looks like danger. It is danger to illusions. Carl Jung would say this isn't a moral failure, it's a symbolic event, an archetypal clash. The wise old figure in the psyche, the senex, meets the eternal youth, the pure. The senex wants order, duty, tradition, and predictability. The pure wants possibility, authenticity, and air. When a culture or a family leans too hard into one pole, the other erupts. Therapy, when it's honest, doesn't create the pure. It gives the pure a language. Suddenly, the good kid with the polished persona starts asking questions the mask can't answer. That's when elders feel threatened. Because the youngsters' questions don't just challenge rules. They uncover the family's shadow, the parts no one wanted to see. The drinking that was called just stress. The rage labeled strict love. The manipulation named sacrifice. The enmeshment praised as loyalty. When the shadow is named, the old bargain breaks. We'll love you if you don't make us look at ourselves. Now love must evolve, or it calcifies. So elders mock therapy, not always from malice, but from fear. A fear Jung knew well. When the self begins to reorganize a life around truth instead of compliance, the old ego structures tremble. Elders sense it instinctively. If this young person claims their voice, where does that leave my authority? If they set boundaries, what happens to the story in which my suffering earned me obedience? If they pursue peace more than appearances, what happens to our family's identity? Listen to the accusations carefully and you'll hear the archetypes speaking. Therapy makes them uncontrollable. Translation: the senex in me has lost command over the household. Healers teach them to leave. Translation: the pure is finally allowed to individuate. Everything fell apart after therapy. Translation: the persona fractured because it could no longer contain the truth. But growth often looks like breaking before it looks like building. Jung called it individuation, the long, messy process of becoming a whole person rather than a role. Sometimes that means divorces happen, not because therapy poisons love, but because it exposes a contract that was never love to begin with. Sometimes that means a young adult moves out, changes careers, ends a legacy of silence. Elders witness the collapse of the old scaffolding and call it catastrophe. The psyche calls it re-foundation. Respect your elders becomes complicated here. Respect is not worship. Age can bring wisdom, but age alone is not wisdom. In the old world, survival demanded submission. Questions were luxuries. In the modern world, Information and mental health tools let the young test inherited truths. Many are wiser earlier because the mirrors arrived earlier. They aren't less respectful, they're respectful differently. They'll bow to truth, not to fear. They'll honor sacrifices, but not at the cost of repeating them blindly. Jung would nudge both sides toward humility. The Senex without warmth becomes tyrant. The poor without grounding becomes fugitive. The task is not to abolish the elder or enthrone the youth. It's to let the living young renovate what the dead old built, without desecrating either. Therapy, at its best, invites that renovation. It names the load-bearing lies. It distinguishes loyalty from self-abandonment. It refuses the false choice between family and freedom, insisting on mature love that can tolerate truth. So no, therapy isn't evil. It's a lantern in a room the family kept dim. And yes, once the light is on, people move the furniture. Some even leave the house. That can be grief. It can also be grace. Because what elders call rebellion might be the soul's first breath of clean air. And here's what that air actually is in Jungian terms. When a young person begins to speak clearly, the family shadow starts to flicker on the walls. The shadow is everything a group refuses to see about itself. The control it renamed care, the dependency it called sacrifice, the favoritism it hid under tradition. Therapy doesn't invent these dynamics, it labels them. And once something is named, it demands arrangement. That rearrangement is what elders experience as disrespect. Why does it feel personal? Because of complexes. In Jung's language, a complex is a knot of emotion, memory, and meaning that behaves like a mini personality. Many parents carry a mother complex or father complex shaped by their own childhood. Good children don't talk back. Family unity is survival. Love equals obedience. When a son or daughter says, "I love you and I'm setting a boundary," that sentence presses directly on an old nerve. The parent's complex leaps to defend itself. "You are abandoning me. You're saying I was a bad parent. You're rejecting our way of life." The young person is reorganizing their psyche. The elder's complex hears an indictment. Enter the persona, the social mask. Every family has one. We are respectable. We are long-suffering. We don't air our problems. The persona is useful in public but suffocating in private. Therapy turns down the persona's microphone so the self, the deeper organizing center, can speak. The self says things like, "Truth is kinder than pretending," and "Peace without honesty is paralysis." Masks don't like that voice. Masks prefer applause to authenticity. So when the mask slips, elders rush to reposition it. Don't tell the therapist everything. Don't exaggerate. Don't be dramatic. Translation: don't disturb the costume that keeps us safe. There's also a culture-level layer, a cultural complex. In many societies, the Senex, old wise man energy has been inflated, endurance admired, silence rewarded, hierarchy unquestioned. The poor, eternal youth is tolerated only as entertainment, not as a moral force. But modernization, information, and mental health language have amplified the poor's voice. Younger people have mirrors that previous generations didn't. Trauma education, vocabulary for boundaries, communities that normalize healing. The cultural complex hears this as an uprising. It answers with cliches. Kids these days are soft. Therapy makes everyone a victim. Back in my day, those phrases are not wisdom. They're defense mechanisms dressed as nostalgia. Jung warned about enantiodromia, the psyche's tendency to flip into the opposite when one side is overdone. Decades of shut up and survive produce a counter-movement of speak and heal. If the pendulum swings, it is not proof of corruption, it's proof of physics. The task isn't to freeze the pendulum, but to integrate its wisdom, stamina and sensitivity, loyalty and limits. This is where boundaries come in. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're architecture. I won't accept name-calling. We can discuss, not shout. I will visit if my autonomy is respected. These lines don't attack elders. They describe conditions for connection. Yet, to an authority organized around compliance, any condition feels like mutiny. The elder's complex shouts, "You're controlling me." In fact, something healthier is happening. Two adults are negotiating reality instead of reenacting an old parent-child script. Does therapy break families? Sometimes it exposes that the family system was organized around an illness, addiction, secrecy, a scapegoat child. When the identified patient stops carrying the symptom, the system wobbles. If the group refuses to rebalance, relationships may end. That's tragic, but it's also honest. Jung would insist that what dissolves under truth was never whole. It was only welded. Consider a simple scene. A daughter returns from therapy and says, "When you joke about my body, I feel small. Please, stop." The father laughs it off and replies, "We're just teasing in this family." The shadow has been named. The persona performs. The daughter repeats the boundary. Tension rises. In Jungian terms, the complex defending the old order has been constellated. Two paths open. The family can metabolize shame into humility, or it can project shame back onto the daughter. You've changed. Therapy made you sensitive. If humility is chosen, a new pattern is born. If projection is chosen, estrangement grows, not because therapy is evil, but because truth was refused. And what about respect? Respect is not age worship, it's reality-based relating. The young can respect what the elders endured without inheriting their coping as commandments. Elders can respect the young's clarity without interpreting it as contempt. Mutual respect sounds like this. Thank you for building what you could with the tools you had, and thank you for building what we couldn't with the tools you now have. Underneath the mockery of therapy is grief. Elders grieve a world where roles guaranteed meaning. Young people grieve the love they thought they had to buy with silence. Naming this grief doesn't weaken anyone, it humanizes everyone. There is no villain here, only strategies that have expired. The self, not the ego, is the real elder. It asks for a rite of passage, from obedience to conscience, from secrecy to sincerity, from legacy to living truth. That passage can include raised voices, slammed doors, and awkward holidays. But it can also include the first honest hug a family has never known. So, practically, how do we walk it? For elders, start with curiosity over control. Replace, "Why are you doing this to us?" with, "What truth are you serving?" Curiosity signals safety. Safety invites honesty. Second, practice shadow ownership. Try, "I was taught that respect equals silence. I've enforced that. I'm willing to learn another way." That sentence de-arms the room more than any lecture. Third, differentiate love from management. If you find yourself negotiating connection only when rules are obeyed, pause and ask, "Am I loving a person or a performance?" Fourth, apologize without a courtroom. Not, "I'm sorry if you felt hurt," but "I'm sorry I hurt you." Accountability is not self-annihilation, it's emotional adulthood. Fifth, update the myth. Name a new family value out loud. In this house, we tell the truth kindly, even when it's inconvenient. Ritualize it. Light a candle at dinner and share one honest sentence each. Small rituals create new neural roads. For the younger generation, start by trading superiority for service to truth. The goal isn't to win, it's to heal. Speak as a collaborator, not a prosecutor. Here's what would help me stay close to you. Lands better than "you're toxic." Use the simplest tools well. When X happens, I feel Y, so I'll do Z. Keep boundaries specific and repeatable. Offer replacements, not just refusals. I won't discuss my therapy details, but I'd love to share what I'm learning about myself when I'm ready. Titrate change. Don't try to remodel the whole house in 1 week. Expect backlash, don't personalize it. You are disrupting an inherited survival code. Build a support net beyond the family, friends, groups, mentors, so that home is not your only oxygen. Both sides can agree to consent-based conversation. Ask, is this a good time? If not, set time limits. End with appreciation, even if small. Thanks for trying keeps the bridge from burning. And when shame floods the room, name it. Say, I'm feeling defensive right now. Can we slow down? Shame metabolized becomes humility. Shame denied becomes hostility. Jung would remind us, the psyche seeks wholeness. That means the senex and the poor must learn to dance. Elders bring ballast, memory, endurance, continuity. The young bring wind, vision, revision, courage to try. Ballast without wind is stagnation. Wind without ballast is a wreck. Together, they become a vessel. If you need a mantra for the passage, try truth over role, love over pride, repair over winning, pace over haste. And when in doubt, ask the self, not the frightened ego, what is the most honest next step that preserves dignity on both sides? Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's a soft question. Sometimes it's a walk. The first honest hug won't erase the past, but it can begin a future. Not the old world of silence, not a new world of contempt, but something wiser. A family myth where respect is earned by courage and kept by compassion, and where growing up doesn't mean growing apart. It means growing true. So here's the truth beneath the noise. The war between elders and the young isn't about disrespect, it's about reality updating itself. When the self becomes the true elder, families move from roles to relationships, from silence to sincerity. That shift can sting, but it's how love grows up. If you're in the middle of it, remember, ballast and wind need each other. Honor what was built. Protect what must be born. Choose truth over performance, repair over winning, and the next honest step over the perfect plan. That's how generational courage becomes generational wisdom. And now, I'd love to hear from you. What old rule are you ready to retire? And what new value will you build in its place? Share it in the comments. Relationships, trauma healing, and spiritual growth. Practical insights to help you live more truthfully, love more bravely, and become whole. See you in the next journey.